Hello world, and we are back. My name's Kyle Fischl, and this is going to be episode 94 of my poker vlog. It's been a few weeks since my last video. A part of that is because I took my first ever trip to Las Vegas for the purposes of playing in the World Series of Poker. I fired a few bullets. The first bullet in the reunion tournament, early on I got a full double, aces versus kings all in pre. That was pretty nice, but unfortunately some card deadness in the middle stages had me fizzle out on that one. Flight C, I built up a pretty good stack, consistently winning pots and consistently chipping up. With about 1,100 people left, I got it all in pre, kings versus queens, got a double there, was feeling pretty good. Unfortunately, about 40 away from the money, I get it all in with under 10 big blinds, ace queen against ace king, and no dice for me on that one. The cash games in Vegas have been pretty phenomenal during this trip. I've had a few very good sessions. Definitely just been there trying to grow some WSOP bullets. Back in Florida for a little bit. Just the gap in the vlogs are due to the fact that my computer for editing is in Florida. Not a system I can realistically travel with. But for this episode, we're going to go over the hands from the last cash game session I played in Orlando before I went out to Vegas. And I have a bunch of hands to go over, so we're going to get right into it. Alright, first hand of note. An early position player raises to $20. There's one caller. I'm on the cutoff with pocket jacks. I raised to $85. The preflop aggressor only has about $300 in his stack, so I'm pretty happy to get all the money in pre against that particular stack size. However, in this hand, the preflop aggressor chooses to just call, leaving himself kind of an awkward like $200 behind. The middle position caller decides to fold. I don't really think my opponent can have a pocket pair better than jacks and not get it all in pre-flop with his specific stack depth. So when the flop is 8-4-5 rainbow, I'm pretty confident that I have the best hand. So I would like to go for some value here. I bet about half pot, $100. And my opponent thinks for a little bit of time before going all in for $200. Well, definitely going to call this one. Feeling very happy with my hand. If for some reason it wasn't good enough, I turn a jack, which is always a happy sight to see. The river, six of hearts shouldn't really change anything. I just announced trips, and I guess I did need that jack as my opponent shows pocket queens. It's always nice to get some run good in the very beginning of the session. Next hand of note. An early position player raises to $20. There are three callers. I'm in the cutoff with 6-8 offsuit, a little bit loose. But I definitely think we can make this a profitable hand given all the previous action and the fact that we're in position. So I make the call and go 5 ways to a flop of ace queen 6, a board where I'm definitely willing to continue at least one street on bottom pair. However, this does likely connect with the pre-flop aggressor's range with an ace and a queen on boards. Now, sitting with just a pair of sixes feels like... However, the pre-flop aggressor checks, and all three middle position players check to me as well. Now I have an option between turning my hand into a bluff and attempting to bet and fold out some queen X's and maybe some super weak aces that can't really handle multiple streets of pressure. In this particular circumstance, I think I have enough equity to just check and see what develops on later streets. When the turn is the 6 of diamonds, that's a very surprisingly helpful card. Now, contrary, sitting here with trip sixes feels like... All I long for, all I worship and adore. Come, Jupiter and Mars. What's even better is that the pre-flop aggressor now bets $15. One middle position player calls and it's on to me. I don't really think the pre-flop aggressor can have an ace here all too often. I think he would likely c-bet with any ace X, especially with a heart flush draw on board. Thinking that my opponents are relegated to a pair of queens at best, I don't think they can call a raise. So in this particular street, I choose to just call and hopefully get some additional value on the river. When the river's the jack of hearts, the pre-flop aggressor checks, and then the middle position player checks to me as well. The middle position player is the one who I believe is most likely to have a heart flush draw. I don't believe they would check when checked to if they made their heart flush. So I'm pretty confident going for some value here. Hoping to get paid off by some kind of two pairs. I bet $40, a very small bet size for the size of the pot. The pre-flop aggressor decides to call, and the middle position player decides to call as well. So I just show my hand, and 3 sixes are good. Definitely nice to get paid off on that river value in 2 spots. Feel pretty good about that one. At this point, the stack is growing very nicely. Pretty happy with that. Next, interesting hand. An early position player raises to $20. There are two callers. I'm on the cutoff with ace-8 of hearts. Similar to the last hand with how much action's being put in pre-flop. In a table like this, I believe you can play a lot of hands in position profitably. Especially with suited aces, there are the implied odds of flush over flushing someone for stacks. This is a hand I definitely want to play at this particular table. So I make the call. The button calls as well, so we are 5 ways to a flop of king 4-4 2 clubs. Definitely whiffed this one pretty hard. It checks all the way to me. Into 4 people, I'm not going to put a bluff attempt out there. It's likely someone has a club draw or a weak king that they're not going to fold just yet. So I check and the button checks as well. When the turn card is the ace of clubs, I now have 2 pair and no kicker problems. However, clubs do come in, which is slightly concerning. The pre-flop aggressor still checks. There's a second check. A middle position player decides to pick up the betting lead with a $75 bet. This particular opponent I've seen get caught trying to bluff a few times. So even though the flush comes in, this is one player I'm very happy to make the call with. So we're heads up to a river, which is the ace of diamonds. I now have no more worries about a flush and don't even think I'm going to get paid off by one if my opponent happens to have one. However, my opponent bets $130. I suppose in hindsight, you should just raise this 100% of the time no matter what. But in the moment, I just never really thought my opponent had anything at all, let alone a hand that could call a raise. I think a flush folds to a raise and a 4 kind of side folds to a raise a lot of the time anyway. So in this particular circumstance, I just called. And my opponent had queen jack offsuit, queen of clubs. So definitely not going to call a raise with that particular hand. And honestly, I kind of like his bluff line. On that board pairing ace, a 4 is in a tough spot. And if I turned a flush, that's also in a tough spot. Pretty natural bluff candidate for my opponent, but I just happen to have a hand that is basically the nuts. Unlucky for him. Next hand of note. The game has been playing a little bit deeper now. It's closer to like a 5-10. Everyone has about 1,500 to 2K in front of them. The raise sizes get a little bit bigger. But in this hand, an early position player raises to $25. I'm on the button with ace-queen offsuit. I raise to $80. The big blind decides to go all in for about $250. And then it folds back to me. Definitely going to make the call with ace-queen. Did not 3-bet to fold for a short stacks jam. So I make the call. So we are heads up and all-in pre to a run-out. A queen-high flop feels pretty good, especially if I happen to be against ace-king. And I river 2 pair, which is also pretty good. Feeling very confident about my hand. Except my opponent had king-jack offsuit. So that's kind of disappointing.
Therefore, this game is now terminated.
If you appreciate my content, please take a moment and subscribe. Thank you. So a slight hit to the stack, but it's not going to slow me down. In the next hand of note, I'm in middle position with ace-king offsuit. I raise to $25. Well, the button 3-bets me to $100 and it folds back to me. I suppose because it's the button, you can make an argument for 4-betting as he's likely 3-betting light. But this particular opponent, I had not seen 3-bet previously, so I put his range a little bit stronger than normal. So I'm going to proceed this one with just a call. When the flop is ace-queen 7, 2 hearts, I'm definitely happy with the flop being ace high. I wish there was not a queen out there because I think that hits a lot of my opponent's 3-betting range. He has ace queen and pocket queens more often than I will in this situation. Not my favorite board, but definitely not going to fold. I check to my opponent and he checks it back. Turn is the 3 of spades. I'm pretty happy to go for some value here. Should have the best hand when he checks it back. I bet $75. My opponent decides to make the call. On the river, deuce of clubs. Also extremely safe card. Very good run out for ace king. I'm going to go for another street of pretty straightforward value. I bet $125 this time. And my opponent decides to call. And ace king is good. So fairly happy with how that one ended up. So next interesting hand. I'm in the cutoff with king jack offsuit, and with 2 limps to me, I'm definitely going to raise this one up. 2 Broadway cards in position's good enough for me. I make it $35. Well, one of the blinds and all of the limpers call, so we're going 4 ways to a flop of ace king queen 2 hearts. Well, it checks to a middle position player who decides to donk jam for $110, and then it's on me. Normally, I would say this is a clear-cut fold, as he's pretty much at worst saying he has like ace 5 and just trying to win the pot. But this particular opponent is on like his third or fourth buy-in of $500, and he had been throwing them around very aggressively and seems to be on a little bit of tilt. So I think it's possible my opponent could have just a flush draw, maybe like 10-9 of hearts, maybe even king 10 or queen 10. He has shown down some weak holdings buy-in after buy-ins. And with this particular dynamic of me as the pre-flop aggressor and that board smashing a typical pre-flop aggressor's range, I don't think anyone behind me is really going to call if I make this call. So 110 to win almost 300. I think mathematically this is supposed to be a call. Let me know what you think in the comments section. So I decided to make the call. Well, to my surprise, the button calls behind, which I really didn't expect at all, and everyone else folds. So we are 3 ways to a turn card, and there's a dry side pot out there. And the most beautiful 10 I've ever seen peels off.
That's got to be the best 10 I've ever seen.
So it would seem.
Well, not sure exactly what to bet into this dry side pot, but my opponent was willing to call 110 on the flop, so hopefully he'll be able to call 110 when I have the literal nuts. So I bet $110. My opponent decides to make the call again. The river is a complete brick, so same with the nuts. Hopefully he can call 250 with some sort of 2-pair or set. If he happen to have miss hearts, he's gonna fold. Either way, 250 is the bet. And to this bet, my opponent decides to fold. And the player who donk jammed did not show his cards. We will definitely take a decent sized pot. Very happy with that one.
I think you knew.
Next hand of note. An early position player makes it $20. There's one caller. I am in late position with pocket 10s. Definitely gonna 3-bet this one. I make it $75. Well, the pre-flop aggressor calls and the middle position player folds. So we are heads up to a flop of king, queen, jack.
설탕뽑기입니다. 선택하신 모양은
Now, in this hand, my opponent leads into me for $125, and I just fold. Yeah, 3 overcards, not quite what you want to see with pocket 10s. The donk lead also makes it a little bit harder to continue. Suppose you can make a case with backdoor hearts and an open-ended straight draw. On this particular board, if the straight comes through, I don't expect to get paid off at all, any amount, as the straight will be so obvious. And it's theoretically possible that I'm drawing to a chop anyway. So I guess this is slightly tight, but I'll just take the fold on this one. Sometimes you do not get the flops you want. Next hand of note. An early position player makes it $25. There are 2 callers. I'm on the button with 9-7 of spades. I like playing suited gappers on the button, especially massively multi-way. They can connect well and lead to large pots, so we're definitely going to play this one. The small blind calls as well, so we are going 5 ways to a flop of 9-7-4, rainbow. That's a very good flop for 9-7. The early position pre-flop aggressor bets $75. There's one caller, and on this particular board with 2-pair, I'm definitely going to raise this one. I think it's likely that one of my opponents has an overpair, or even just will have like an ace X that doesn't feel like giving up to just one raise. And we definitely want to build the pot now while we're pretty confident we have the best hand. So I make it $250. Well, the small blind decides to call, which I really wasn't expecting, and the pre-flop aggressor and middle position caller decide to fold. So we are heads up to a turn card. Which is the king of spades. Definitely a card I'm happy with. I would say the small blind's more likely to have hands like 8-10, pocket 4s, maybe 8-6, something like that. So a king really shouldn't ever connect with them. So on this particular card, I'm pretty happy to throw in another decently sized barrel. On the king card, I bet $350. Well, my opponent calls pretty quickly. And the river is the Jack of Diamonds, a card I very much did not want to see, as I thought the most likely holding for my opponent was 10-8, so pretty disappointing to see that. When my opponent checks to me, I don't see myself getting called 3 streets with anything worse, and any and all flop sets and rivered straights are going to call or raise anyway, so when he checks to me, I'm pretty happy to check this one back, and my opponent had 6-5 of hearts. So called the 2 streets with a straight draw, which the specific straight draw that he had missed, and he was definitely not going to call a river bet. So pretty happy with how I played it and the results of this particular hand. A final hand of note. With a button straddle, the small blind calls. I'm under the gun with pocket queens. Not gonna just call this one. I raised to $35. Well, there are 2 callers before the button raises to 175, and the small blind calls a second time. So at this point, it is definitely a lot of action. The button, I would say, is one of the best players in all of the Florida and Orlando area. So I'm not so certain that I want to do a 4-bet out of position against that particular person. And with position being my biggest concern, I decided to just call this one and reevaluate post-flop. So on the Jack-10 deuce flop with 2 diamonds, small blind checks, I check, it goes to the button. The button bets $220, and the small blind folds, and it's back to me. Now this is the board where I think I'm going to raise, possibly play for stacks if it comes to it. I'm happy to fold out any equity he has on ace-king, ace-queen holdings. I think it's possible an ace-jack may pay off this bet, and I get some extra value with clean turns. And similarly, I think like an ace-wheel of diamonds is going to pay off this raise, and I can reevaluate based on the run out. So I'm fairly happy with this raise, and so I raised to $600, and it does not take my opponent too long to fold. So I'm pretty up with the pot size, pretty up with the results. Don't think I played this hand too conventionally or well, but this time it worked out for us. Overpair. For this poker session, I'm into the game for $1,200, out of the game for $2,982. It is a profit of $1,782 across 10 hours, equates to $178 an hour or 35 big blinds an hour. So yeah, Florida cash game's definitely crazy. I am going back to Vegas for the next 2 weeks. Gonna play the Colossus, possibly the Crazy 888. Definitely gonna continue my bracelet hunt, but regardless, there will be more vlogs coming to you in the future. Thank you for watching.